Lord, we thank you again for filling up our lake and looking after each one of us. And Father, we pray that you'd look to take care of us these months ahead with the PG&E shut-off and such. All minor things in your eyes, Lord. Thank you for that. Thank you for each one that's here to do our business of this little town. We thank you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Mr. City Manager, any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
Take a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Purdock and seconded, I think it was a tie between Councilmember Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, we're going to start off with presentations. Do we have the, yes, we do. Presentation of Clearlake Animal Control of July's adoptable dogs. We have multiples tonight.
Hello,
Good evening.
my name is Willow Goldtooth, for those of you who don't know me. So tonight we have Tyson and Snowflake. They're both approximately 3 years old. They're both males and neutered, and they are up to date on their vaccinations, and they are both microchipped. They like to go on car rides. They also enjoy walks and playing with toys. For further information, you can contact the Clearlake Animal Shelter staff at 707-273-9440. Or to see Tyson and Snowflake in person, you can visit the Clearlake Animal Shelter at 6820 Old Highway 53 in Clearlake, Monday through Friday from 12 to 4 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Hobbs, you have something to add?
Yes, I'm just going to give the members of the council a quick update on the animal care and control statistics year to date. So through today, we have taken 299 dogs into the shelter. 163 of them, or 54%, have gone to rescues. 53, or about 17%, have been returned to the owners. 32, or 11%, have been adopted. 33, 11% have been euthanized. So the overall live release rate is about 89%. And as you're aware from the past, the no-kill shelters are technically anything above 90%. So we're still staying pretty close to being the no-kill shelter.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you so much for that feedback.
Okay. Okay, next we'll have a presentation of a proclamation on National Night Out. And I think Chief White, I'd like for you to come up as well.
We actually have our volunteer group who's making it happen. All right.
Then why don't you all come up?
And I know.
Actually addressed to Chief White, but it's, I'm sure, meant for all of you. In appreciation of Chief White, July 2019. Whereas Andrew White has been Chief of Police for the City of Clearlake since July 26, 2018, and whereas Chief White has had significant and positive impact on the City of Clearlake, and whereas Chief White has been tasked with an event known as National Night Out in the City of Clearlake, and whereas Chief White has done a yeoman's job in putting said event together, and whereas Chief White consistently strives to make the City of Clearlake a better place to live, and now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Clearlake does hereby commend Chief White for his work on behalf of the City of Clearlake, which he is urged to continue. dated this 25th day of July 2019, signed by myself, as Mayor of Clearlake. And I would extend that certainly this does include each and every one of you for all the hard work that you put in. So, Chief White, I assume you wanted to say some words, or?
Before you go, I've got a certificate of recognition from the State Assembly.
Oh.
Here,
To,
come up here.
And it's always an honor for an old retired chief to plug the new chief, and he's doing a great job, and I thank the council for supporting him, because he really has done wonderful stuff since he's been here. With that, I've got a certificate of recognition from the California State Assembly, Clearlake Chief Andrew White, National Night Out, America's Night Out Against Crime. I commend you for your leadership in organizing Clear Lake's National Night Out event. Under your direction, Clear Lake has joined 16,760 other communities that will be participating on a united effort to bring awareness, safety, and neighborhood unity against crime and promote drug prevention. Thank you for your hard work and dedication to bring to the community of Clear Lake together and create a police-community partnership. Signed, Cecilia Curry. Congratulations, Chief.
I have a couple of presentations here I'd like to read for you. Okay, this one is addressed to Chief of Police Andrew White. In special recognition of the significant positive changes you have made to the Clear Lake Police Department as Chief of Police, including important departmental physical changes, improving staff, and volunteer morale. Your effective leadership in law enforcement, community partnership efforts, and for taking on the National Night Out project with your capable staff. We are grateful for your dedicated service. Signed on July 25th, 2019 by Senator Mike McGuire. I'll have the original for you tomorrow. Congressional commendation presented in honor of the Clear Lake Police Department in recognition of their National Night Out event. Date August 6, 2019. It is my pleasure to honor the Clear Lake Police Department for their work in organizing and facilitating their third annual National Night Out event. Your sustained dedication to keeping the Clear Lake community safe and united will not be overlooked. In the face of tremendous adversity endured these past couple of years, both the police department and community at large have demonstrated constant and steady resolve. In times like these, it is of vital importance that the public feels both protected and embraced by the police force. National Night Out spurs Clear Lake residents to mingle with fellow neighbors and their committed public servants, encouraging all to engage, learn, and enjoy. These exchanges are pivotal in maintaining and building upon the connections and solidarity essential to the community's well-being. On behalf of the men and women of California's 3rd Congressional District, please accept my sincere gratitude for your dedication to this community, as well as my best wishes for the success and happiness in the years ahead. Signed, John Garamendi, Member of Congress.
Thank you. I think tomorrow is actually my 1-year official anniversary, but it's been an absolute pleasure working for the city. I appreciate the trust of the council, the community, and the members of the department in welcoming me to the community, to the police department. I can't tell you my name was mentioned a lot of times in there, but it's really the work of all the people that I have the opportunity to be with every day that makes everything happen. The crime reduction is magnificent. I think National Night Out is a huge opportunity for us to celebrate that, but also to remain vigilant and keep an eye on crime and come out against it and celebrate what we have within our community. So again, while my name's on there, my thanks goes out to all the staff and community and city officials that have helped with our success and our continued success that we will have in the future. So thank you.
Okay, it's time for public comment. This is the time for any member of the public to address the city council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. Please complete, we didn't receive any speaker cards, but, okay. The Brown Act, though, to go on at, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss issues brought forth under public comment. Council cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed on the next available agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on each agenda item. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment? Ms. Duke?
My name's Patty Duke, and I live at 4950 Spruce Street, and I've mulled this over for almost a month. You've been doing a wonderful job, but I also feel that we need another committee, an ad hoc committee for harassment for our citizens who are harassed, whether they be elderly, whether they be disabled, whether they be new to the town, and they haven't grown up here, they don't know everybody. And I requested a citizen's arrest, and there was an inappropriate officer response, and I don't see any resolution, so I'm going to have to put it in writing. So phone calls and talking to people. I don't know who I'm talking to on the other end of the line, how long they've lived here, who they know, and whether anything is going to be done. It's a good old boy city here. And there's other citizens that I've talked to that have the same problem. Where do you go? Mediation did not work. Court didn't work. So there needs to be a way for people to go to someone to have addressed what steps they need to take to stop the harassment. Because I'm tired of it. And it's not just me. This isn't just a personal thing. Even though it is, I know there's other people. Whether it be a drug lord, whether it be who knows what's living next door, but there's people that know people that have positions that get around the law. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the council or audience requests otherwise, or if staff has requested a change under adoption of the agenda, in which case the item will be removed for separate consideration. Any item so removed will be taken up following the motion to approve the consent agenda. Are there any changes, Mr. City Manager, or anyone from the audience? Okay, seeing none.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item number 3,
Okay.
the warrant register.
Item number 3 will be pulled and considered immediately after the rest of the agenda of the consent items are acted upon. Can I take a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, motion to approve with the exception of item 3.
Okay, it's been a motion by Council Member Harris and a second by Council Member Purdock. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, moving along then, we would
Want to talk about the warrant register? No.
I know that. Move on to item number 3, the warrant register. Councilmember Overton, would you like to?
Yeah, I really just pulled this because on the warrant register, there is a $3,635 and, let's see, I guess it's total $3,673.58 that was made out to Energy Miser. And it's going to be $3,635.52 that was paid by the senior center that will be reimbursed to the city. So I just wanted to make that public in case somebody wanted to know what that was. That was for the dishwasher that Larka actually paid for. And so we paid for that. We paid for that thing. So I just wanted to bring that in case somebody had any questions when they seen it maybe doubled up there.
Thank you, Councilmember Overton. Are there any questions or comments from the audience? Seeing none, we'll bring it back.
I'd like to make the motion to approve item number 3, the warrant register.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Overton, second by Councilmember Purdock. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, moving on to item number 5 under business, presentation by Pacific Gas and Electric Company on the Public Safety Power Shutoff Program.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and staff and community members. My name is Herman Hernandez, and I'm your local public affairs representative for Lake and Sonoma County. And I'm going to give the city manager a couple seconds to upload the presentation before we get started, if that's all right. Or we can get started as he uploads the presentation, because I hope it's in your board packet or council packet.
No. No, we don't have one.
Actually, I have some extra copies from another presentation I did last night. The front page is the only difference. If you would like, I can hand those out to you.
That would be good. Yeah, there's only 4 of us.
I apologize to the community members and some of the staff who do not have the presentation in their hand. But I'm going to try my best to kind of give a good overview of our community wildfire safety program, which really includes the public safety power shutoff. But the community wildfire safety program is an effort that came out of, it's a continued effort and an enhanced effort on top of the routine work that PG&E has been doing in our communities throughout our service territory. And we all know why we're here. There's been a lot of the climate change and some mismanagement of infrastructure and these historically large wildfires that have been occurring throughout our territory really have caused the state and awesome. Thank you so much, Alan. I do not have the clicker though, so you're gonna, oh, cool. Thank you, sir. All right, now working. All right, cool. Thank you, sir.
Next.
So some of the things that happened after the October 2017 wildfires in our service territory, our PG&E leadership and as well as our meteorologists, engineers, they actually not only visited San Diego Gas and Electric, but they visited other parts of the world. They went to Australia and New Zealand, who are experiencing similar climate changes. as well as these wildfires that we've been devastated by over the last 6 years in our community. And they came back with a lot of different practices that they have been doing to combat the wildfires. And one of the things that came out of this is actually called the Wildfire Safety Operations Center, which is located in San Francisco. It's where our meteorologists, our engineers, and our scientists and leaders are. This is actually a component that's very important in the public safety power shutoff, but I'm going to quickly go through the first column or through the first page to let you know all the different things that PG&E is doing to make our infrastructure more resilient and to have our communities be safer. So on top of this Wildfire Safety Operations Center, they have been installing weather stations on numerous poles in Lake County. This is all public information, and you're able to access this through mesowest.edu. But there's been 12 new weather stations since 2018 installed throughout the county. We've also installed HD cameras. As a matter of fact, only one, and I heard it was not working properly recently. But their goal by 2022 is to invest in 1,300 more weather stations throughout our service territory, meaning Lake County is definitely going to be getting more weather stations, and then 600 new HD cameras by 2022. And a lot of that actually helps us with getting more localized weather, as well as being able to spot wildfires when they're first occurring and being able to navigate our resources to protect the infrastructure in our communities. A lot of us in this county live in Tier 2 or Tier 3 areas. Parts of the city of Clearlake are actually in a Tier 2 area, but in the second column you'll see the enhanced vegetation management that is happening in Tier 2 and Tier 3 areas. This is on top of the routine work that PG&E is consistently doing year-round, but you may see a lot more work being done on that front. Something that we completed from December through June was the wildfire safety inspection program, and what that was what I call a blitz, where they went through all of our transmission lines, transmission poles, distribution lines and poles and substations, and did an incredible job at identifying any parts of the infrastructure that were either outdated, they needed to be replaced, or they needed to be fixed. The first phase of that project has been completed for the most part. I think it's 99% complete, and then now they're going back and replacing the A, B, and E tags. The A tags are the urgent and emergency replacements, and they're currently working on those. So you'll see a lot of work happening in different communities throughout the county and Eastern Clear Lake, because the only part of Clear Lake that is actually in a Tier 2 area is the eastern part on the other side of the Highway 53. Oh, there you go. There's a map right there. Thank you, Alan. That is actually the map that shows the Tier 2, which is the gold part, and the Tier 3 area is the red part, which is the elevated fire risk zone. The other thing that we do during wildfire season actually is we disable automatic reclosers, and this recloser technology is something that I did not know about until I started working for PG&E about a year ago. Chief White and I almost share the same anniversary, but the recloser is actually a technology that in the winter time, if you've ever experienced the lights go out and then they come back on, it's because the recloser, something hit the line. It could have been vegetation, a squirrel, or a bird, and the recloser turns off the electricity and then checks the line, and then if there's no damage to the infrastructure, the electricity comes back, but if there is damage, it maintains it, it keeps it off. In the summertime, that can be incredibly dangerous because that can actually, the process of a recloser can cause sparking, which can cause a vegetation wildfire. So those are disabled during the wildfire season. The other thing we're going to talk a lot about, which is the public safety power shutoff, that is something that we're going to be seeing a lot more of this year, and the Lake County customers have experienced it twice last year in October and November, and we'll get more into that later. But the other thing that we've definitely been doing, and this is more 5 to 10 years, up to 20 years down the road, PG&E has been replacing power poles in high fire threat zones, Tier 2 and Tier 3, and replacing them with harder wood or other types of material, which you'll see a lot of metal distribution poles. And what that does is basically they're less likely to burn during an actual wildfire. We've also done a little bit of targeting undergrounding, and we've been replacing our conductor line with what they call tree wire. It's a stronger wire. It's less likely to snap if vegetation hits it or if birds climb onto it. And the snapping of wires is what, when it starts to spark, is what causes some of the wildfires. So that's definitely been replaced. They've also been testing out what they call resiliency zones. There's a beta project of that going down in Angwin. It's basically a way to be able to section off a part of a town, or we'll probably be seeing these more next year in some cities, where it allows you to kind of generate a certain part of the town to stay on power, so when the power does go out, the community still has their critical facilities intact or on power. The next slide, Alan, if you help me out, is just a quick view of the Wildfire Safety Operations Center located in San Francisco and how it actually works with our weather stations as well as those high-definition cameras. The meteorologists and our engineers are constantly looking at this. We have 2 people in there 24/7, and this is giving us up-to-date data on what the humidity levels are, the wind, temperature, and what's going on in our service territory. And that actually can be accessed by anybody in this room and in your community at mesowest.utah.edu. Again, the high-definition cameras, more of those, we will be seeing more of those. They already exist in Lake County, but these are PG&E installing them in working together with other emergency response organizations that have these also. And that you can actually access the HD camera through alertwildfire.org. The next page, I won't get too much into this, but it's just an example of the Enhanced Vegetation Management Program. The state requirement is 4 feet to maintain the vegetation, 4 feet around our electricity lines, and we're coming in and making sure that when we do our enhanced vegetation management, we are maintaining the lines 12 feet around to give it some time during the year so the vegetation can grow back. The next page kind of is a lot of words, but it's basically talking about what the Wildfire Safety Inspection Program actually was and is. It inspected 50,000 transmission lines, 700,000 distribution poles, and 222 substations. They found a lot of things that needed to be addressed urgently, and then some things that could be addressed over the next 3 months, and they're currently in that phase of addressing what needs to be fixed. The next slide kind of just is a slide that gives you a visual of all the different ways that we were inspecting our lines. We had crews, we had drones, different sized drones that were taking high definition pictures that engineers were looking at, and we also had helicopters inspecting the lines. The next page just talks about all the different system hardening and maintenance and repairs that we've been doing. And I'm going to skip through that one because I'd like to get into the public safety power shutoff part of the presentation. If we can skip actually to page number 10. So everywhere we go when we do this presentation, people want to know what is the public safety power shutoff. At this point, a lot of people are more aware and more educated about what the variables are that PG&E is looking at, but of course it includes a red flag warning. That's more of a warning for everyone that our EOC is triggered and our meteorologists and leadership are taking a red flag warning seriously, but it does not mean that there's going to be a public safety power shutoff, and here's why. The other variables that they're looking at are the humidity levels being forecasted of 20% or lower. They're looking at the winds of 25 miles per hour or more that are constant, and wind gusts of up to 45 miles per hour or more. They're also taking into consideration the dry vegetation, and one of the reasons why Lake County was not on the list for the public safety power shutoff that happened in June was because both Sonoma and Lake actually had those late rains in May, and the vegetation levels were still not at a dry enough level for us to be concerned about a public safety power shutoff. But that is definitely something that we strongly consider, especially at the period that we are currently in the wildfire season. The last thing is on-the-ground real-time observations. We have many crews working on many different projects here in Lake County, and the managers and the local supervisors are reporting back to our meteorologists and leadership in San Francisco, letting them know what it actually is like in the communities. The next page is actually the public safety power, or the community. Sorry, there's so many acronyms, I apologize. This is the CPUC, which is the California Public Utility Commission's high fire threat map. This came out last year, January 2018, and it's open to the public. You can Google this and actually put your address in to find out if you live in a Tier 2 or a Tier 3 zone. But the reason why we put this slide in the presentation is that this year, as opposed to last year, the thresholds have increased. So last year, PG&E was only considering 70,000 level distribution lines. Now they have everything on the table, and it includes transmission lines, meaning that no one that is in our service area, or everyone who lives in our service area, can be subject to a public safety power shutoff. So it's important to know if you live in a Tier 2 or Tier 3 zone, because we're targeting the transmission and distribution lines that are going through these high fire threat zones. So just because most of the city of Clearlake is not in a Tier 2 or Tier 3, you are surrounded by those zones, and a lot of the electricity that's fed through Lake County does pass through those areas. So that's why it's incredible, and I forgot to say this at the beginning, but the main reason that I'm here today is, number one, is for the city of Clearlake to develop and have a plan for when this happens in the future, but also the community members who are sitting in the room to also have a plan for their nonprofits, for their local businesses, and especially for your families and your neighbors. And the second reason is people are not taking this seriously, and we need the help of the community leaders and community members to help us spread this information to make sure that your friends and your neighbors also have a plan for themselves. So the next slide on number 12 goes into the public safety power shutoff event notifications. My role in a PSPS is working directly with your city manager and keeping elected officials updated, and sharing any intel that I have and updates that I have on this PSPS. But for the customers, it's very similar kind of notification process. One of the biggest things that we've definitely been doing is customer outreach, where we're asking all of our customers to make sure that they update their contact information with PG&E and sign up for PG&E alerts, and anybody can do that through their My account, and they can add either their cell phone number to get text messages, they can add their landline, they can add their email address, whichever way you would like PG&E to notify, you can do that, and do that right now or tonight to make sure you're getting the PG&E alerts. So if you're signed up for the notifications, the gold standard, and Chief White and Alan know that we have not been able to meet the 48-hour threshold. Both times that we called the public safety power shutoff last year for Lake County, we were only able to give on average 36 hours notice for both events, the one in October and November. But ideally, you're looking at a 48-hour notice. Then 24-hour notice, and just before the electricity is turned off, you would get another notification. And I have spoken to a couple people in the room today who said that during the public safety power shutoff, they were not getting updates, and I'm going to go back to our team to make sure that that's not the case, because during the public safety outage, you would be getting notified of estimated time of arrival of our crews if they find any damage to our infrastructure, but you would also be notified when the electricity is scheduled to be back on. So once the power has been restored, you would also be notified. We're also making sure that we're keeping our social media going and our local news sources up to date on this information, so they can also provide the information through their channels. The next slide goes through working to restore power. So as many of you know, for the city of Clearlake, it wasn't that impacted last year, if I remember correctly, but for Lake County, there were 12,500 customers who were turned off in October 2018, and they were shut off at 8 p.m. on a Sunday night. And PG&E our crews have to wait until the weather system passes through the territory that is impacted until they can begin to inspect every inch of overhead line. So for the example of Lake County last year, at 6 a.m. on Monday morning, the weather system had already passed through overnight, and our crews were already out either driving or walking through the mountains or on helicopters inspecting every inch of line to see if there was any vegetation or infrastructure damage to our lines and poles. As we're doing that, we start to isolate the damage, and we're able to bring back the power to our critical facilities first. It's how it's prioritized, so like hospitals, your city hall chamber here, schools, the police department, and that's how we prioritize re-energizing the power. And we also do it through isolating the damage. So the areas that were damaged may not get power until later on, but the areas surrounding the damaged area will get their power sooner. It's not like everyone gets their power back at the same time. As we fix the damage, which last year for the October outage, there were 27 instances of infrastructure damage where either vegetation was on the lines or our wires were on the ground. So a lot of that restoration takes a little bit more time. And just to let you know, the 12,500 customers, 70% of them were back on within 24 hours, and the rest were back on within 36 hours. And once everything is repaired, we restore the power, and we then again notify our customers. One of the things that I forgot to mention in the event notifications was medical baseline customers. Medical baseline customers are a specific group that PG&E has in our database, where if they do not pick up their notification, they will be phone banked. So we actually have people who know which customers did not pick up their phone, and we're actively calling them. And if they do not answer their phone, we actually have crew members who are driving door to door, making sure that the customers who are not answering the calls have been notified that there is going to be a public safety power shutoff. If they do not answer the door, we can't go inside the house, but what we do, just in case they were not home, we leave a door hanger that says the date and estimated time that the power will be shut off. So going back to the presentation, the last page is kind of all the different ways that we're working with our customers. I forgot to mention that I did leave some flyers at the front desk, and one of those flyers is actually a brochure that was recently mailed out, and our customers have also received other mailers throughout this year, letting them know that they need to have a plan, and here's how you can update your contact information. We've been hosting many actually presentations throughout Lake County, and on top of emails and any other alerts that PG&E can do. So let's see, that is all that I have right now, but I do want to share one improvement that happened that was improved from last year, which has to do with the pgne.com/PSPS event maps. So last year, what was very difficult, again, this is one of the first times that PG&E did a PSPS. We were not technologically set up to be able to do an event-specific map. And what I mean by that is you could go to our website and look up your address to see if a public safety power shutoff would impact your home, but that would be for a worst-case scenario for distribution lines. What that didn't do is it didn't tell you if you were actually going to be impacted by the October event. So it was very confusing for our customers. The improvement that they made this year is that they're creating, once we notify our customers that there is going to be a public safety power shutoff, they're going to have a website that they can go to log in or to type in their address and find out if the public safety power shutoff is actually going to impact their homes or their businesses. And that's something that would be shared through our notifications, and that's something that we did not do last year. But if it's all right with you, that concludes my presentations, and we can have some time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. I assume that I'm going to hear this in 2 weeks also, huh?
Yes, sir.
I think we'll open it up to public comment first, and I will limit public comment to 3 minutes per person. I would say stand by, Mr. Hernandez. I'm sure that some of these will be directed towards you.
Patty Duke, 4950 Spruce Street. This may sound a little archaic, but my father was a wire chief for the Santa Fe, and they used Morse code back then, and he had to determine where the line was down between Santa Fe in San Bernardino, Fresno, Bakersfield, to keep the lines up, to keep the trains running. And there was no computers then, and when he retired, it took 3 people to do what he did by calculating. We have computers now, and he's talking about drones and helicopters and all these other things to find down lines. Where's the computers in all of this? That's my thought.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Oh, I knew you were coming.
This is not addressed to PG&E as much as it is addressed to the public, and that is that a lot of people don't realize that when we do have a power outage, if you have shifted to a UVerse component of your, like a bundled package with AT&T, it takes power to run those phones. So I'm just wanting to make sure that in the past, I still have my old rotary phone. I still use it. It's still there. I wouldn't do that. But for many people and a lot of my friends, I've tried to educate them that that phone does not work and it won't work. So again, it's more of a communication to our public. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Linda Peralta Conway. I'd like to know
Mr. Hernandez, do you want to address that?
So I hate this answer, but the answer is we are not compensating any of our customers. This is not a new thing to California. San Diego Gas and Electric has been doing this for 12 years, and the state has never required them to reimburse their customers when they've performed these public safety power shutoffs.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Harris, I don't know that you were before Councilmember Overton, but I looked your way first.
So I just wanted to make a real quick safety mention. I know during this time, myself included, I made motion to add a generator and an automatic transfer switch to my home. And I know a lot of people are taking action to do such a thing, which I totally understand. And just like you were mentioning about losing the stuff in your fridge and that sort of thing, totally understandable. With that being said, I just want to encourage everybody to make sure that they're seeking the right personnel, electrician, to make that interconnect with your home, as there is a potential safety hazard involved in that. In that, if they do kill the power, they're basing the assumption that the electricity is off, and you could be backfeeding the grid there by starting a fire if there was something laying on the lines or that sort of thing. So it's just really concerning at this point, because I know a lot of people are not necessarily going the proper route. They're more just going and picking up like a 10 kilowatt generator and trying to create a plug it into your panel scenario. So that just concerns me without the proper interlock and transfer switches involved. So just really important to make sure that all the safety procedures are being followed, and that is a type of work on your home that would require a permit through the city.
Excellent advice. Councilmember Overton.
Did you want to say something?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, for PG&E customers, there is, on our website, there is generator safety information, and I want to echo Councilmember Harris that if you are going to go that route, that it's incredibly important that you call our 1-800 number if it's a transfer switch, but if you're going to install a generator or make sure that your current generator works, call a professional electrician to make sure that it is working, because generator safety is a huge concern, and it's definitely an option that people are pursuing. So I appreciate your comments.
Also excellent advice. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Councilmember Overton.
First, I want to thank you for your presentation and the work that you've been doing around the county. It makes us aware. We actually just had a meeting. I actually run the senior center down here, and so we all got together yesterday, and the information that PG&E provided to us was great. We were able to talk about things that we needed to do and how we were able to help each other. One of the things with the people that I deal with, some of them are seniors, some of them are developmentally disabled. They don't have the funds for generators or anything. So what I'm trying to teach them is make sure that you have, and I don't see that in some of the paperwork that I've got from PG&E, other ways to keep your things cool, how often, like, not to open up your refrigerator, freezers. The information that I've gotten so far doesn't say other things that are just kind of, I know we think common sense wise, but sometimes as we get older, our brain gets weaker. And so what I've been putting out in our newsletters and stuff like that was the PG&E information, but also maybe some other things that would help them realize there's other ways to keep their things cool, such as if you don't open up your freezer as little as possible, stuff like that. So we've been doing that. And we've also been trying to tell our people to have things that are, non-perishable, but still able to fix your meals, without having the electricity. So I do appreciate the information that I've gotten from PG&E. It's helped me out a lot to give it out to the community. So I want to thank you for your presentations around the county.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. But I wanted to mention that if you can provide some nonprofits that work with communities of special needs or seniors, if you can provide that to Alan, we're actually working right now on a kit to provide more specific information and target that demographic of customers.
Absolutely.
And that's currently what we're working on by the end of the month. And we can't do it any sooner, so the quicker the better.
Okay.
Thank you, Council Member.
Councilmember Purdock.
Is there, you mentioned in your presentation that we could receive text messages. Is that through the public Nixle system, or is that something special to PG&E?
That is something through PG&E alerts that you can do on your account.
So it's through the account. Is there a number that you can provide?
Yes, absolutely.
I didn't see it in the presentation.
Yeah, so the number at the end of the presentation, we didn't get there. The last slide actually has the 1866 number. That you can use that number because it's all wildfire related, or you can call the 1-800-743-5000 number, which is on most customers' bills or emails. But if you call the number that's on this presentation and some of the flyers that I left at the entrance, it will have a customer hotline that'll allow you to do that quicker. Some people have had issues updating. We've been doing these presentations for a while, and people have tried to do the updates themselves online, and they've just had challenges. And I've heard it's a lot easier to do it over the phone.
Okay.
Councilmember Harris.
Just a curiosity regarding that. I just think that it would be unique, and I don't know if there's some issues with making this happen, but as the Nixle program works, would it be possible for them to have a format that would allow you to text, for example, your address to a number, and then in response, you would automatically be placed on a notification list for that address?
I have not heard that idea. That is a great idea, and I know that that's
Super
how
simplified.
Nixle,
Yeah,
that's how Nixle works.
It would just be super simplified. That way, the average person, instead of them going, I know from my own experience, when I'm challenged with logging into the PG&E portal to go through, go my account, log into my account, navigate to find that spot. Just the average person just won't do all of that. But if it's just a matter of you texting your address to a number, I think it would just be a way to get a lot more people to adhere to a program like that.
Just definitely shoot that up the ladder. And I've been doing this presentation now for a year, and that's a good idea. And I also don't want to confuse our customers with the Nixle alerts. These are specific PG&E alerts.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I could definitely find out if we can add that feature.
Alerts have become so common. I mean, most any business that I deal with at this point, including my own business, we use alert systems for our customers, as most companies do that. So we can just do an exchange through just a simple alert system. So it's kind of neat.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Hernandez, you've got a really tough job, and I really appreciate the fact every time I talk to you, you're friendly, you're helpful, you want to answer questions, and you pretty much always have a smile on your face. I couldn't do that. So, again, we really appreciate this, so thank you.
Mr. Mayor. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Mayor Kramer?
Yes, sir. Yes.
I just wanted to give a quick update to the board, or to the council. I don't think I have any questions for Mr. Hernandez. I do want to echo working with him. Although it's a difficult and challenging situation, it's always pleasurable, and he fights to get information from PG&E to address our questions, but he continues to do that and feed information back to us. So we talked a few weeks ago about some of the city's preparations. I just wanted to give you an update on that. We have ordered a fuel tank, which will be delivered on August 15th. That will be able to provide gasoline for our public works vehicles, as well as our patrol vehicles. And as you recall, we already have diesel fuel storage. We've also ordered a light tower, which includes a generator, which will be delivered in early September. And work is scheduled to update both of our traffic signals within the city to allow battery backup and generator hookup, so they will be operational during an outage. This wasn't something that was talked that Mr. Hernandez didn't mention tonight. We talked about before. We asked him earlier today. PG&E is continuing to work on potential locations for community resource centers. These are not cooling centers or high-level shelters, but would be potentially open during shutoffs to allow the community access to information and charging of cell phones and or medical equipment. And then the final thing I wanted to add is, I don't have a lot of information at this point, but the council and many others within the community have been concerned about sort of the most medically fragile people within our community and making sure that they're able to be taken care of. I was somewhat pleased in talking with the county's health department director last week, and they have, I believe, done a pretty good effort and are continuing to work with those medical equipment providers and really push them to make sure that they have a plan to connect with their customers and make sure that they are as prepared as possible for an outage. So I'm going to try to get some more information as that work continues to evolve, and I'll share that with the council. But it made me feel a lot better to know that they're really putting a heavy effort into doing that, and so I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Councilmember Harris, you have another comment?
What are our estimated days of standby storage for our fuel tanks? In the event of an emergency?
So our generators have 72 hours of operating capability. And then as far as operating our vehicles, we're ordering a 1,000-gallon tank. That's what we have for diesel fuel already. We're using, on average, I think we've used about 120 gallons a day of gasoline during an emergency.
8 days about?
And we've been told by both Westgate Petroleum and Redwood Coast Fuels, who do fuel delivery, that because we obviously have a public safety operation, that we would be high priority on getting fuel delivery. So we feel like that would be adequate.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Are there any other comments, or do we have anyone have any recommendations for staff?
What you're doing.
Okay, that sounds like good advice. All right, moving on. Item number 6, approve a 2-year agreement between the County of Lake, City of Lakeport, and City of Clearlake for support of Lake County PEG TV. Mr. Flora.
Yes, so this came before your council a few weeks ago, and at that time, the full PEG board had not reviewed the agreement, and so your council requested that we wait until that time. So the full PEG board met on July 8th, reviewed the agreement, made some very minor adjustments, which are included in the version that you have in your packet, and so I believe the county has already approved the agreement at this point. I'm not sure about the City of Lakeport, but at this time we're recommending that the council go ahead and approve the agreement as presented. The only other thing I did want to point out is I mentioned as part of the last presentation that the council would need to re-up the ordinance related to charging the 1% franchise fee, because that was expiring in either September or October. We had our city attorney review that a little bit more thoroughly. I believe the county had their attorneys review it as well, and it was determined that based on the situation, the council actually does not have to take any additional action, and in this case, it will automatically renew.
So nothing needs to be added
So
to
nothing
this.
related to that is before you. We were going to bring it at the same time, but that is not required. So with that, that's my report, and we just recommend you approve the agreement.
Okay. I'll open this up to public comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Any comments, questions?
I make a motion that we approve the agreement related to Lake County PEG TV and authorize the mayor to sign, and also to, I guess, to include the reaffirmation of that additional agreement.
Second.
Is there a specific term to be using on that?
All right, the motion's been made to approve the agreement and by Councilmember Harris and seconded by Councilmember Purdock. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 7, adopt resolution approving the report of delinquent public nuisance abatement costs and collection of such charges on the tax roll. Is this Mr. Flora or Mr.? Okay, Mr. Lambert? Officer Lambert?
Public hearing to confirm assessments for delinquent abatement costs. The purpose of this hearing is to consider and act upon any and all appeals of proposed special assessments. Upon consideration of the evidence and testimony, council may grant the appeal and adopt a resolution to deny or amend the assessment, or deny the appeal and adopt a resolution upholding the assessment for abatement of real property. Pre-hearing information. By motion of the City Council, contracts were awarded to Resource Environmental and HD Excavating for the demolition and disposal of the 10 properties as described in the staff report. Inspections and abatement warrants were issued by a judge of the Lake County Superior Court for each property. Demolition permits were issued to Resource Environmental for 9 properties and HD Excavating for 1, and all 10 properties were abated. Inspections were performed at each property, and it was confirmed that each abatement had been completed to the satisfaction of the building inspector. Attached to the staff report is the proposed resolution confirming assessments and statement of expenses. Staff recommends that council confirm all assessments as proposed. Property 1 is 4192 Hemlock Avenue. That's before the abatement, and that's after. The next property is 15210 Cass Avenue. It's before. That's after. 4293 Snook Avenue. Before. And after. 13672 Arrowhead Road. This wasn't a complete demo. It was just removing. The structure was fine, so the structure was just boarded up and secured. All the trash and debris was removed. The next one is 13970 Manakee Avenue. Before and after. 3411 Brown Street. That's before. It's after. 14841 Valley Avenue. Before and after. 15834 31st Avenue. Before and after. 15989 32nd Avenue. Before and after. And the last one is 14668 Lakeshore Drive. Before and after. And that's the end of my staff report.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard, is there anyone here that's wanting to contest? Okay, seeing none, are there any public comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Purdock, or Councilmember Purdock?
I'd just like to express my gratitude to code enforcement and to the police department for the good work that's been going on. Looking at the cleanup that was done, I think that you did a really good job in keeping costs down, and it definitely is changing the look of the city, and I know that the neighbors, I'm sure, appreciate having those blighted areas taken care of. So thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it.
Any other comments? I will echo those comments.
Just had a legal point of clarification. We had an error on our original slide that said public hearing. It is a hearing in public, but it's not a public hearing within the meaning of the government code. So we just want to clarify that for the record.
Thank you. Supervisor Lambert, I do appreciate the presentation and all the work that your code enforcement staff goes through day to day. Makes things look, it helps us to make Clearlake a cleaner city, and we do appreciate that. I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make the motion to accept resolution number 2019-34, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake approving and confirming the statement of expenses of delinquent abatement costs as special assessments and requesting the County of Lake to collect such charges on the tax roll.
Second.
Motion is made by Councilmember Overton and seconded by Councilmember Purdock. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 8, adoption of ordinance amending the Clear Lake Municipal Code regarding reserve police officers. Who am I asking? Chief?
Chief White.
Yes.
Chief White?
Good evening again, Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. This item is a request to adopt an ordinance to amend the municipal code regarding reserve police officers. The department currently utilizes reserve police officers as an augmentation force for our full-time police officers. The way the program works is defined by the state law and POST, which is Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, is they set forth different levels of reserve officers based upon their training experience, and it dictates what kind of duties they can perform as well as what type of supervision is required. Our municipal code makes a reference about reserves but doesn't clearly delineate the police department's reserve program or provide us with something called a designated level 1 reserve. Essentially, a designated level 1 reserve is a level 1 reserve who's assigned to the general prevention and detection of crime and enforcement of laws. Their requirement for training and education is the exact same as a regular police officer. By enacting the ordinance, it would allow us to designate these officers and provide them with the full authority of a regular full-time police officer. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any public comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Are there any questions, comments? Or are we ready to move forward with the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce the first reading of ordinance number 231-2019, an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Section 2.2-8 of the Clearlake Municipal Code regarding reserve police officers, read by title only. An ordinance amending Section 2-8 of the Clearlake Municipal Code regarding reserve police officers.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Harris and seconded by Councilmember Purdock. Is this one where we need? No. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. Item 9, discussion and direction on the development of a local tobacco retail licensing policy and reasonable distance from entrances ordinances. Mr. Flora.
This item will be presented by Ms. Swanson.
Honorable Mayor and council members. At the June 13th meeting, council heard a presentation regarding tobacco retail license policies and asked staff to bring forward information for consideration at a future meeting. A tobacco retail license, or TRL, is issued by a local agency, such as a city or a county, to businesses that sell tobacco products. This is in addition to any state license the retail business is required to have. The TRL policy is aimed to reduce illegal sales of tobacco products to minors. As of September of 2018, 144 California communities have passed some form of a TRL policy, including neighboring communities in Sonoma County, for example. Sonoma County, Healdsburg, and Windsor have all passed TRLs and have seen a significant reduction in illegal use sales. Lake County Health Services reports that there are at least 18 tobacco retail establishments within the city of Clearlake. There are 4 basic components to a TRL policy. All tobacco retailers must obtain the license in order to sell tobacco products, and it must be renewed annually. The second is the TRL should have a fee set high enough to sufficiently fund an effective program and enforcement efforts. Also, coordination of tobacco regulations should happen so that a violation of any local, state, or federal tobacco regulation violates the license. And fourth, a financial deterrent should happen through fines and penalties, including suspension and revocation of the license. There are several questions for the council to discuss tonight regarding the adoption and implementation of a TRL policy. The first question is, how restrictive does the council wish the ordinance to be? Within the staff report listed are some considerations for the council, including a ban on flavored tobacco, pricing requirements, packaging sizes, the number of licenses the city will allow, and possible restrictions near schools, youth-populated areas, and restrictions on licensing cannabis businesses. Next, the council should consider enforcement. Council has adopted new programs and given direction to staff on priorities such as weed abatement, enforcement, and vacant commercial building registration. Devoting resources to new programs often reduces those resources to other priorities. There is grant funding available to local jurisdictions to support enforcement efforts to reduce the illegal tobacco sale to minors. This funding comes from the 2016 passage of Prop 56, which increased taxes on sales of tobacco products. The funding deadline for this fiscal year has passed, but the city can apply next fiscal year. In addition, as the council is aware, there is currently a moratorium on new tobacco retailing businesses, which is set to expire August 13th. Staff will be bringing forward a recommendation to the August 8th meeting to continue that moratorium for up to another year as this process continues. Council has asked staff also to bring forward a discussion on the ban of smoking near business entrances. Smoking is currently prohibited by state law near the entrance of any public building. Additionally, council passed an ordinance in 2012 prohibiting smoking in any city park. Several cities in California, including Windsor, whose ordinance was included in the staff report, have banned smoking within a reasonable distance of the entrances to all businesses and multi-unit housing buildings, private and public. For purposes of their ordinance, a reasonable distance is defined as 25 feet, and the council could modify that if they wish. So that is my report. I'm happy to answer questions of the council and facilitate discussion to form consensus. Gina Lyle Griffin with Lake County Health Services is here again tonight to assist with questions you may have as well.
Was there any public comment? And Cheryl?
I only have one, and it's just an observation. I live in a multi-family unit in another community that did have the smoking ban, and that meant that nobody could smoke in their homes anymore. And for me, it was not a problem. It felt more secure because it was a safety issue. But we had a lot of people that were veterans, and to all of a sudden recognize that that's going to be banned, that you cannot smoke in your home, I thought it really caused due distress on them. So as you're looking at what you might actually put into effect, which I'm assuming we don't have here now, that was just something that I observed that took place in another community where I live. So, and that was, again, my concern there is for those, especially older veterans, that smoke is part of their routine. So thank you.
Do you have any comments? Any other comments from the public? Okay, bringing it back to council, Council Member Harris.
So I'm wondering, Mrs. Swanson, if there is a tie between Prop 56 funding and enacting an ordinance as of this, as far as achieving grant funding.
The grant funding has been available for the past 2 fiscal years, and I'm not sure, obviously it wasn't available before that, but I'm not sure. I think, let me just look at my
2021.
I appreciate it.
So
none for.
It looks like throughout the state, TRL policies were passed many times before the grant funding was available. For instance, the City of Richmond passed one in June of 2009. I can see it here in the listing that as far back as June 2001, TRLs were passed. So it doesn't seem to be correlated.
I think that the addition of a TRL policy in our community is absolutely necessary, and I'd also like to see the prohibition of smoking at the entrance of any kind of restaurant or commercially accessible building to extend from 25 feet to 100 feet.
Well, basically, you're saying they can't smoke on their own properties.
You're extending it from 20 to 100, is that what you're suggesting?
Currently, she had made mention that it is based right now of 25 feet per the state, but we can create a more stringent restriction. Is that correct?
So the law for California states that all public buildings, you cannot smoke within 20 feet of any entrance.
20 feet, excuse me.
Of any public building.
Okay.
The ordinance I provided in the staff report is from Windsor, who then went further and stated any business, private or public, and any multifamily housing, you cannot smoke within entrances, within 25 feet of those entrances.
Okay, and that's, I would like to see all entrances, all publicly accessible entrances, whether it's a private business or it is a public facility. I'd like to see that extended. I would like to see it extended up to as much as 100 feet, but that would be up for discussion here. I just want to see that the smoke is not affecting anybody trying to gain access to any business or public facility.
Councilmember Overton.
Okay, well, 100 feet is basically saying you're off the property and you can't smoke anywhere, so we can't do that. I mean, the average lot is, 50 by 100, so I think 100 feet might be a little extreme. I'm all for no entrance things. I think I don't want to be getting into personal properties as far as housing. I think the housing units here do very well. A lot of them already have made their own agreements with the renters on smoking on the premises. Per se, the ones across the street from the community center, they cannot smoke on the premises at all. I think let's leave that to the government funding people and let them do that. Let's just deal with our businesses and our public entrances. I think 25 feet is reasonable and makes it safe, and people can still smoke on their own properties. They just have to stay 25 feet away from the entrance. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. So,
Councilmember.
there's that part.
Sorry, are you done?
No, I said that's just part of this, though. So,
Ms. Swanson, you mentioned varying levels, and you utilized the Windsor ordinance. Is the Windsor ordinance considered a restrictive ordinance? At which end of the spectrum would you?
So in my research, it's about standard.
So it's kind of in the middle?
Right.
And are you proposing that we would maybe adopt a similar ordinance to the Windsor, or again, just that's an example?
It is the prerogative of the council. Windsor's just, like I said, one that I found, it seems pretty standard. Okay. And, but the council, if it's your decision to change any details, it's your prerogative. But the Windsor, bottom line is the Windsor one is pretty standard throughout the state.
Well, and I'd just like to remind everyone here and also those watching on TV, Lake County was identified 58 out of 58 as far as health rate rankings. That means we're at the bottom. The cancer rate in Lake County is triple that of other communities that were part of that test. And we also have an epidemic, in my opinion, of school-age children, even down into elementary school levels, that are now using vaping tools and doing that. It's very inexpensive for them to get. I spoke with a coach here at our local high school who had to remove several students because they're violating the vaping rules and things like this. I think this is long overdue, and as a community, we need to make positive changes, and I'm very grateful for you bringing this to us because we need change. Thank you.
Councilmember Overton, you had another comment?
No, I just wanted to say that I was looking into theirs, and I don't agree with the multi-use building in the ordinances. I think that's just more private, not necessarily open to all public people. Those really have to do with the people that either utilize the area, or if they live in the area, that's up to the landlords, I feel, to work with the residents. I don't think that that's something that we should be putting on them. As I said, I know people that right now that you're not going to stop everybody. If they're adults, they're adults, but a lot of these residents-wise, I think we should just encourage that if there's apartments or multifamily homes, but here it's like single detached homes. I mean, you're getting into people's personal stuff, and I just don't think, I'm sorry, you're not going to come tell me that I can't do something on my own property. I just think that's getting a little carried away. So I say we need to leave that out. and take one step at a time. Let's do the businesses in common areas that are public, and then see how that works. And then if we want to make something more strict, maybe, as I said, we do really good when we take these smaller steps. We put something in force, it gives the people, some reactions and used to. We did it with the marijuana, it worked really well with the cannabis stuff. And I say we do the same thing with this, take steps at a time.
Councilmember Harris.
So I'll take a moment to kind of reiterate what I had mentioned before. The reason why it concerns me, the 25-foot rule, is because you will have to walk through typically a smoke cloud on your way into an entrance of a business, because even if the person that is partaking in the smoking is 25 feet away, you're typically going from your car to the business, and you're still going right through their smoke to get to the entrance of that business, unless they've taken a special consideration to go far away from the entrance on either side. I can attest to the fact that I don't smoke. I am very sensitive to that, and I regularly experience that, to the point where I have to make a special trip around to try to avoid people's smoke when I'm trying to go into the entrance of a business. And I just think that if we're setting a standard here, this would be one of those items to really look at. 25 feet may seem like a reasonable distance from the entrance of a business, but it's all in perspective of where that person is from the entrance to that business. If they're still you're still having to traffic right through the area where they are, it does make it difficult to get to there without experiencing that smoke. And some people don't want to experience that. It kind of sets a standard for our city if we allow that. The other thing that I'd mention too is that I would like to see a complete ban of tobacco use or any other smoking use on the Little League fields at Redbud Park. Allowing smoking in the actual park, I know that that's allowable, but as far as like the fields themselves, Little League fields, I'd like to see that completely eliminated, unless I'm mistaken, and that is currently.
Currently, there was an ordinance passed in 2012 which does not allow any smoking or any
of the parks.
in any park. That includes the ball fields.
So maybe just more enforcement on that particular item. That's something that I can tell you during the Little League season is regularly an issue. We would have to stop games to talk to people that are sitting there right outside the fence, and the smoke is lofting into the children as they're trying to play their sports. So it's very frustrating. So both of those things, and just trying to create as much of a distance as possible between the poor habits of the parents and the impressionable minds of the children.
Councilmember Murdoch.
Well,
I'm sorry. Did you have something to say?
No, I can wait.
well, I just, we have an expert here, and I'd like to hear from the county representative.
Yes.
She's been waving her arm back there, so I thought I was taking that as a clue.
That's why.
Being observant, you know.
Well, that's why I was asking, getting the public whether they're looking at
evening.
you, expecting you.
Good evening.
Thanks for inviting me to be here. Just one thought, when you're talking about the smoking or bans in certain areas and talking about the Little League fields, sometimes you have to update because now we have vaping, and so a lot of times people don't consider smoking vaping. So you might have to update your language to include any combustible. There's wording that we can provide, but you'd say vaping or vapor aerosol or something that doesn't just say smoking, because then people can say I'm not smoking, because smoking is considered something that produces smoke to a lot of people. So that was just one thought when you were discussing that.
Excellent suggestion.
I appreciate that, and forgive my ignorance and not knowing about that 2012 ordinance. As it looks to my eyes, there would be no ordinance in place.
Yeah.
It's continuous.
Another thought that I had about, you guys were talking about the distance, 25 feet, usually if you're thinking of where a business sits, like on a street or with a sidewalk, would usually mean that they would be out into the street. But depending on what type of business it is and how it's situated, the point that you brought up could be a factor of if the only way you can walk through is through an area. So there might be some kind of a compromise that you could come up with on that.
I have a question. So vaping, so we're talking about smoke and something that hurts the public in general. When somebody vapes, and I don't know anything about vaping, I have done some research. I can't find anything where it says it is harmful or anything like that. But how is somebody vaping harmful to somebody that's walking by them? What's harmful to that person? What's harmful to any of them, by the way? So I just can't find anything on the internet that says they're harmful. So I'm curious about that.
I'd be happy to provide some information to you in writing. I can email it to Melissa. What they're finding as time goes by, they haven't been around for a long time, so there has been some studies that have come out, but one of the things that they are finding is that there are chemicals within the e-liquid fluids. The fluids are not regulated by the FDA at this time. All manufacturers of flavored e-liquids, which is what's used in the vapes and in the Juuls, all of those, the ingredients have to be turned into the FDA, but they're not going to be reviewed, and they're not going to be deemed safe or not for a couple more years. But there are flavoring chemicals that are known to be carcinogenic, and it is the superheating of the oil and the flavoring that produces byproducts of chemicals. So I can definitely send information to you on that. When it's exhaled and somebody else breathes it in, even though it's not secondhand smoke, it's like a secondhand aerosol or vape aerosol, and it can be harmful too.
Is there proof to that? I mean, like, is there actual scientific proof to that? Because believe me, I've looked for it, and I'm pretty good at researching. And from what I can see, is there's actually no scientific proof. This is just people's opinions. But is there do you have a scientific proof that that's true?
Well, I can definitely send you
Okay.
all of the recent
I can't
studies.
find anything that's
and
science. I'm a science person. I want to know the proof from a good study. And I was trying to look because we had some controversies about the vaping over cigarettes and all of that stuff, and I just couldn't find anything. So, I'm not saying that they're good or bad. I'm just saying that I haven't been able to find any proof that they're harmful. What somebody wants to do to their own body is their own business, and when it becomes harmful to other people. Smoking has been proven that it can be harmful to other people, but I couldn't find anything on vaping that says that they've proved that that's harmful to other people.
Okay, I'll definitely send some things from California Department of Public Health and some other research, and I'll make sure that you have that.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you for that.
Based on your experience, are there health concerns with secondhand vape smoke?
I don't know that there's been a lot of studies yet on secondhand vape smoke, so that would be hard to say. As far as people who have inhaled vapor from e-cigarettes and Juuls, and they're also called mods, there's all different kinds. They have found cases of what's called wet lung, popcorn lung, because of the diacetyl, which is a flavoring that's used in many of the different e-liquids and e-juices, as they call it. And there have been many cases of youth becoming extremely sick because of the high level of nicotine that's contained in them as compared to other tobacco products.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Chief White, from your perspective, how is this going to impact your department or code enforcement as far as enforcement goes of a smoking distance, for instance, increasing it from 20 to 25 or 100 either way?
So with regards to the smoking ban, I mean, once we figured out that, I guess the ask that I would have, because we end up facing on the enforcement side, is just to be clear that, the unintended consequence of what we're doing, like council might think about that there's public entrances to buildings and then there's private, like employees go in the back, for example, of some places and they may smoke or whatever else, is just to understand that if we say it's every entrance, just realize we may be telling businesses and or even public buildings for that matter, that nobody can smoke anywhere on the property. And so, I think from the enforcement side is obviously if we see with it, we deal with it. I had not heard about the Little League fields, but I can tell you we write a bunch of citations for smoking in the park, primarily right across the street actually is one of the hotbeds of it. So we can certainly look at the other locations. The other side that I'd have from the enforcement perspective is that the council consider about bus stops. Being a poor community, a lot of people rely upon the bus to get from place to place, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen with little children in buggies or whatever else, or standing around at a bus stop and there's people in a big cloud of smoke. And the fact is they can't afford to use some other mode of transportation, so they're stuck there, and I can't do anything to tell them really to move. So I would just ask that you maybe consider that when you look at banning in front of businesses and entrances and that sort of thing. In terms of how we would take action on it, it would be through an administrative citation. So somebody would get a fine. They wouldn't be racking up a criminal record or anything like that. Obviously, there is an alternative course. If we had a repeat violator, then we could look at criminal consequences, but at this point, it would be through a fine.
Thank you. The other thing is thinking with regard to the Little League Park and others, and businesses too, signage saying no smoking. Do we have that? Is that something that we have on the books, or is that something that?
There is at the parks, there's signage with the park rules, which specify that. We've had internal discussions about additional signage like during special events, just as a reminder for people coming in from out of the area. The other one that I would add, because I didn't fully answer your question, is regarding the TRL component for the enforcement. That would be one where we would have to identify staff time to be able to go out and do the inspections, make sure that the packaging, whatever else is ultimately adopted into an ordinance, that we would have the staffing to do that. Right now, it would be something that would likely fall in part to part of the business licensing process to integrate there for the initial TRL licensing. In terms of follow-up inspections and that sort of thing, generally that would fall to code enforcement. But right now with staffing, we may have to put something else on hold or exchange places depending upon how much enforcement we needed to do in that area or compliance checks.
Okay, so in considering this development of a policy, things that I would like to see then would be that signage, would be how we would enforce it with administrative citation or otherwise, and where certainly the distances from public entrances, and I have the same concerns with regard to private entrances in the back. That's almost, well, it's going to put a huge burden, I would think, on enforcement. And if we put an ordinance in that we can't enforce, I think it's worse than not having the ordinance. I think we really need to give some thought to how we would approach that. As far as these the things we have down here, I think education on flavored tobacco is probably a start. Again, at some point in time, I think we're going beyond. I don't like smoking personally, but I think that's going a little bit beyond where I think we as a council or we as a city can regulate. I like the idea of 25 feet as being practical. Well, I'd like to see it go to 100 feet also, but I'm not too sure that's practical. And then restrictions near schools and youth populated areas, I believe that again is covered already by state law. But I do think we should have signage up to remind people of where smoking is prohibited. A lot more signage than we've had. So I would offer that. Did you have something?
The only other thing I would say is we're talking about signage, and the Department of Justice grants that people are eligible to apply for, they do cover some signage and enforcement. When you're talking about enforcement for TRL, because we're talking about two different things here, but with the TRL, The whole idea would be to make your, whatever your fee is going to be, the licensing fee, which you can see from the things that we provided, that they're very low in some communities and much higher, just depending on the density and how many actual retailers you have, how many you're going to allow. You do have a moratorium now, but those funds are supposed to go towards part of enforcement. For some cities and a neighboring county, not Sonoma County, but has a city, they do 2 underage purchases a year at every single retailer. And that is the way that they judge whether or not that their TRL is working, and that's when the fines are given.
And I think sting operations are something that we had a little conversation about the other day with regard to enforcing retailers, make sure they're observing the rules and the laws.
Yeah. Especially if they know that it's going to happen, 2 times a year. Over time,
Sure.
they get really on top of it with employees and such.
Councilmember Harris, you had another comment?
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback from Chief White, from my fellow council. As far as the speaking about the public entrances to businesses and to public facilities, I think that it would be realistic to add language that specifies the primary entrance to the business, because obviously a public entrance or primary entrance compared to, let's say, an employee entrance in the rear of the building would make a dramatic difference in the way that would be viewed. I totally understand that. I'm specifying that the attention be brought to the public entrances specifically because it has an effect on other members of the public who are trying to gain access to that particular location. And yeah, I would be more than happy with reducing my my wish or dream. Do remember though, we are in a time where some cities are flat out banning, and I don't think that it's absurd for us to look at, a decently stringent modification to what we currently have as a standard, which is the lack thereof. So either we move towards the idea of protecting the citizens, or we keep it business as usual.
And keep in mind too that we are going to be going back and looking at a number of total number of businesses that can sell tobacco products here in the near future, if I recall, in a future agenda item, and that's coming up.
Well, not exactly. I mean, there's currently an urgency ordinance that the council adopted that placed a moratorium on new businesses, which with the information that we've been provided is around 18, I believe, that sell tobacco products. And so that's about to expire, and so unless the council directs otherwise, we intended to come back at the next meeting and ask the council to extend that in light of the interest here in developing some policy on that. But there could be some additional steps put into place if the council desired to, in the future, further reduce. I mean, it's a pretty high ratio of citizens to access points. My understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, one of you, but that statewide it's about 1,000 to 1, and we're more like in the 900 to 1 range. Some communities have limited it to like 2,500 to 1 or higher. And so, you could have the discussion about whether you wanted to try to reduce that number now, but it's a little more difficult to do that. But if someone goes out of business or whatever, you might not allow additional ones to be replaced, that type of thing. But at this point, it's just there can't be any more in addition to the 18 that would be added, and we would certainly recommend limiting that from additional ones coming in. And there are some businesses on the horizon that probably would like to sell that. I mean, we got a new gas station that is in the process of, under construction right now. And so those are the things you need to think about. But I do want to kind of tie on to what Chief White mentioned about, it sounds like there's some strong interest in doing this. Right now, we don't feel like we have the staff capacity without adjusting priorities within the department to take on this additional responsibility at this time. There probably are a number of steps the council could take now, perhaps while you directed us to apply for funding next fiscal year to fund this type of unit and maybe take another step. It's just, as Mayor Kramer mentioned, I mean, you could put the policy in place, put the ordinance in place, but to make sure that's successful and reduce that access to tobacco products, we need to have some level of enforcement out there to hold the businesses accountable. So, we're not asking for specific action tonight other than hopefully some clear direction so that we can craft whatever ordinance the council wants to see and bring it back.
I think, Madam Clerk, that the direction we've given from the comments we've made.
I'd like to make a comment before you go give directions. If I may.
Councilmember Overton?
So I just think it's funny is when marijuana come in, we had an ad hoc committee. This to me is just the same thing, basically smoking. There's a lot of details here. It seems to me instead of us trying to figure it all out, we should probably have an ad hoc committee on this to work with staff to kind of bring back and work and determine, because there's a lot of details here. This is not just a simple little thing. If you read to all the different things that might need to be addressed and what is going to be, like you said, the enforcement and the charge and what is it that we're going to include. So I think that it might be good to have an ad hoc committee to work instead of the council sitting here trying to give these little bits and pieces. Sit down and then bring back something to the council. As you said, we don't really have funding to enforce it right at the moment, but that would give us some time while we're applying for this to actually get, and if we have an ad hoc committee and they come to determine that there might be something we can put in place to kind of slow things down or something, then we can always bring that back to the council, and so that's my suggestion, so.
Would you suggest be on the ad hoc committee? Not
I'd like to
necessarily
be on it.
people. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure
so.
you want to be on it.
Because I have two opinions.
What different?
Well, I'm thinking,
types
of
people?
course, we need our police department and.
I would definitely be willing to do that.
Yeah, and Melissa, and whoever else needs to be on it, but law enforcement definitely needs to be there so that they can tell us what they're feel that they're going to be, and maybe we could get some information from other cities and what their law enforcement are doing. I see this being kind of a put together thing and getting information still. That's my opinion.
Councilmembers Harris or Purdock, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, there's a number of cities and counties that have enacted these ordinances. This is, it's nothing new. But since we're looking just simply for consensus and direction tonight, I want to move ahead, and I'd like to see something in an ordinance created.
Okay, with staff coming back?
Correct.
Without an ad hoc?
Correct.
I concur. All right, quite frankly, I concur as well. I think it's something that staff has done a lot of work on.
Perfectly capable of doing.
And,
Honorable
I would
Mayor.
say, Councilwoman Overton, I'm sure that your input to them would be welcomed, as well as yours.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of marijuana things too, but we chose to do the right thing and let the public have input and talk to people and find out things. So marijuana is a pretty dramatic issue, been proven that it does damage to people too, and yet we're not willing to do the same thing for other people that have the same thing. So banning, you're going to ban alcohol, you're going to ban a certain type of food. This is what I'm saying is when the council starts stepping in and getting into people's personal lives, I understand things happen that smoke affects other people. I still think that we got to be cautious about what we do with this here. So.
Understood.
Voice of my opinion.
All right, are there any other comments? And do you have enough direction?
Actually, I wanted to be clear to the council that the ordinances that we were discussing, one regarding the TRL licensing is a separate ordinance from the distance from private businesses. So there would be two ordinances we would bring forward to the council.
Sounds good.
Okay, and so if I'm hearing the council correctly, the council is not interested in determining minimum pack size for cigars or little cigar, okay, and not interested in a flavor ban. Is that correct?
No, I'm interested in flavor bans.
Okay, is there a consensus for a flavor ban?
If we feel like the flavor ban scenario is something that would significantly reduce the usage by the youth in our community, then I'm in favor of looking into that as an option.
That's the whole reason for it.
Mayor Kramer?
Well, I would like to see that as being an education thing, instead of a
I do
further
not.
prohibition on our businesses that are selling products, but I don't have a hard and fast opinion about that. I just think that these other steps first are probably of more importance at the moment.
So it does not sound like we have a consensus on the flavor ban. And let's see.
Minimum pricing requirements. Do you want to give us another, do you want to discuss each of these items, the minimum pricing, the minimum packaging sizes?
You know, in a general sense, I think what I would say is that my concern is, as much as I am concerned about the youth having access to the products, I think our first step would be protecting others who are not partaking in the product from being affected by somebody who is. That's my primary concern. Second to that, obviously, a completely different factor is the youth being able to get a hold of products that they should not be getting a hold of. Reduction of the youth consumption in general is very important, but getting a hold of the products to begin with is, the first step of them gaining access to it. So.
Yeah, you have to be 21 years old, if I'm not mistaken, to buy
Supposed to be.
tobacco products. And that's where sting operations, et cetera, come in to try to enforce that.
With
But
limited
again,
exception.
pardon me?
sorry?
With limited exception, if you're military, I think you can buy if you're under 21. But that's, yeah.
Right.
So in addition, I'm hearing that there is a limitation on, there is an interest in limiting the number of tobacco retailers.
To maintaining a moratorium, yes.
And also you only want a certain amount in our city, period, no matter when this goes. And I like the ideas as they go away.
To reduce.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think
Okay.
that's a different question though, right? That's
Well,
what we're looking at tonight.
Well, I mean, all this direction is good. So, I mean, we'll bring back the moratorium. It sounds like
Right.
there's clear direction on that. But then we will also need to draft a permanent ordinance that would limit the number. And it sounds like we'd like to base that on sort of a per capita ratio that's less than what we have now. That allows less retailers than what we have now. Is there any direction that you have on that number, or do you want us to do more research and come back to you on that, or?
And the research that you've done so far, it sounded like you came back with a kind of a range. What would you say the median range was for that sort of?
I don't know. I saw a few numbers, but Miss Swanson did more research than me, so.
It really varied from 1 per 2,000, 1 per 2,500. It varied.
So I think it would be realistically a goal for us to say 1 per 2,000 would be something to try to achieve, since we're not even close to that at this point. We would essentially have to cut half of our tobacco retailers out to even come close to that goal. I think that would be a very realistic goal for us to set, is 1 per 2,000 at this point.
Okay.
That would limit it to eight businesses.
Thereabouts, yep.
Okay, thank you for
10
that.
less.
And then,
And that would come into being as those that are in business now, we would take their license away or not renew it, but that any new one couldn't come in until we're down to that 8. Is that what you're?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, so if we could talk about the entrances just a little bit more to make sure we're all on the same page. You're looking at public and primary entrances being limited to or restricted from smoking within 25 feet of that entrance. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
That's what
And
they
with-
said.
Okay, well,
100.
Hey, I'd be perfectly happy with 50. I just think that I don't actually. I just don't want it to affect people, and I think that I do a lot of traveling. When you go to an affluent community or a healthy community, you don't have to go through and wade through smoke to get into the store. And we have to do that here. And I think that's unfair to our citizens to have to wade through smoke to get in to buy their fruit and vegetables. It's unfair to them. They should not have to be inundated with smoke to get into a store. It's just not right. So whatever we can do as a council to protect them is our job.
do I hear a 30 or a number that might be agreeable?
20.
Go with the 25 is plenty. That's almost a half of a block away from any entrance. That should be, if we enforce the laws that we already have.
We have small blocks at
That's
25 feet.
that's the curb across from the entrance at Walmart. 25 feet. So as long as you don't have to walk past that, I guess you can get in.
So are we at 25 feet or?
Yes, 25 for me.
If we decide to move it, we can always bring it back.
And then you also agree to include bus stops in that as recommended by Chief White?
Absolutely, bus stops.
We have a lot
And
of
any,
buses too, so it's.
and of course, any youth-oriented,
If you're worried about the youth, then we
facilities.
need to talk more about flavor. I mean, it's just,
Well, they shouldn't be selling to the youth anyway, so that's where the stakes should be coming in, so.
So we could,
To the youth, then they should be,
but it's happening, council member.
they should be fined, and they should
Well-
be, they should lose their license.
you'd like to have direction given to staff to research and identify possible education programs related to that?
I'd be in favor of
For the
that.
council or the public?
For the public.
Do you need counsel, or do you need
Which would include the
education on
counsel.
that
Oh, I just-
personally?
You know, they used to tell us that smoking was good for us because it increased our lung capacity and was, you know, the thing of the day. And all kids should smoke and everything else. I mean, now we have the data.
And Dick Tracy lived to be 90, and I heard that
I don't
one
know
too.
about that, but, I mean, there is so much information out there. I don't want to restrict people. I raised my right hand and said I would enforce and support the Constitution of the United States. So I don't want to tell someone if they're in their own home what they can and cannot be doing as far as, you know, what they have access to. When it comes to predator companies preying on our kids, I haven't talked to too many smokers, and both my parents smoked, and they never once said, boy, I am so glad I started smoking. Everybody I've talked to, well, I can't say everybody, the majority of the folks that I talked to wish they never would have started, especially with the costs associated. But it's highly addictive, more so than heroin, and I just,
Now, I certainly don't agree with those sentiments, but I think there's a practicality issue and an ability to enforce the ordinance issue. And that's where I think we're limited.
we have an opportunity to take, I think, a good step here, and I would just hate to see that pass by.
And if we take that step beyond what our law enforcement can enforce, I think we're going backwards.
So we've passed ordinances that restrict people from rummaging through garbage cans to collect recycling, and that's causing mixed-use issues. We passed an ordinance for that. I still see people going through garbage cans. It's simply a tool. It doesn't mean that every person who is rummaging through cans or smoking within 25 feet of an entrance is going to receive a ticket, but it's a tool that our enforcement personnel can use.
We all have our opinion. Are there any other comments, any other direction you want?
The only other thing I have on my list is clarifying you want us to review the tobacco use in parks ban and see if it needs any tweaking to include vaping, or do you want to leave it as is?
Yeah, that part I'd go.
I would like it to be reworded and include the proper verbiage on the signage, but I'd also like us to take a look at that potential, as you mentioned about, I'm sorry, your name again? Dina. As she had mentioned about potentially gaining some funding for signage, I think that would be really beneficial as well, to make sure we have very clear and decisive signage, and a lot of it, in particular at the Little League fields. I really, really want to see it very clear that there is to be zero tolerance for smoking of any kind in front of or around our children. And just out of curiosity, do we know exactly what the distance is from those locations? Because I can tell you, during every game, every day, there's somebody directly across the road smoking. It's lofting into the children as they're. So if it's just within a certain, inside the perimeter, or if it's within a distance of.
It's within the perimeter of the parks.
Okay, so that would be something I would heavily encourage, as well as to increase the distance from it, to be included in that as well. So instead of just saying the field area itself, I would like to increase the distance from the field as well, so we don't have the smoke lofting into the.
Sorry, now you're getting into just too much. People, you cannot make irresponsible people responsible without you stepping up and just saying, look, you're being irresponsible to smoke around the kids at the Little League or at the park. If I see somebody smoking in the park, I still see them. I go right over to them and say, this is a non-smoking area. This is a children's area. You should have enough sense not to smoke around your children anyway. Please move it out.
Right.
You know, you guys are going to have to step up, but we can't start getting the public, right-of-ways and people's private property across the street, stuff like that. It's going to become a very legal issue. I say stick with the park. We do need to post the signs, and maybe the Little League people can just really educate the people that are out there smoking. I totally see it all the time. I understand what you're saying. They used to come over to the youth center, and I used to have to go out and leave the grounds because there was no smoking on our grounds at all. And so I had that problem too, but I just had to go out and tell them. So I think there needs to be signs over there, because I don't remember seeing any signs of the Little League.
I don't know either. I'm trying to think about. Lee might be more informed on this, but I don't really remember seeing signs myself. But I know it's been I'm sure you can attest to this as well. It's been an ongoing issue forever.
Yeah, it's a big issue at the Little League field. There are small blue signs posted up high on the behind the backstops, but they get spray painted or taken down by people and things like that. They're small signs. There's no. I don't believe there's any sign like at Austin's or Redbud Boat, Thompson Harbor.
We can buy some more signs.
I like signs.
I think signs are cheap.
Maybe an announcement at the Little League, at the beginning of the Little League games, every game should be announced. Please remember, these are children. If you're a smoker, we understand you think you're on the street, but that smoke is still affecting the children.
Right.
Please go sit in your car, they can go to the parking lot and sit in their car, but, I would just maybe do that. I understand it though, because like I said, I used to come over to the youth center and smoke in our parking lot, and I had to go run them out of there, so.
Are there any legal issues or limitations to what we're trying to accomplish here that you can think of?
The city's police power is pretty extensive when it comes to regulating for the public peace, health, safety, and welfare. And as was mentioned, that there are some cities that completely ban it in all public areas in the city. I do believe once you start regulating on private property, you run into some serious constitutional issues. But in public areas, I believe that the city can prohibit this type of harmful activity.
Thank you.
Parks, we already do that.
Thank you.
I mean, it could be extended to all public areas, sidewalks, streets, public areas beyond parks.
Okay, is there anything else that we haven't covered that needs to be covered?
I believe that we have
We're
clear
okay.
direction.
Thank
Pardon
you.
me?
Thank
We have
you.
A lot of direction. Okay. We have one more public comment out of turn here. Where were you when we were asking for public comments, sir?
been reduced to 3 seconds.
I'm very sorry. I've been reduced to 3 seconds. So there is a new sign at Burns Valley School, which at first was a little shocking because it's a different sign, but at the same time, with Prop 64, people feel that it is okay to smoke cannabis publicly. And so to have the signs that says no cannabis, no cigarettes, no vaping, all of the above is what I'm seeing being posted in the schools to remind people that these are the things you can't do. So just saying no smoking tobacco may not be enough in the world that we now live in where cannabis is legal. And at the same time, I would suggest if we're looking at things like flavored tobacco or oil, maybe we should be doing the same thing about candy that is being made for cannabis, because that is also something that I think that is really attractive for our kids. Again, it's not something they can buy, but we all know that alcohol, cigarettes, and cannabis are easily accessible by parents or other adults who are not being responsible and passing it on to others. And so if we can reduce the attractiveness of some of these products, then we might be able to reduce the usage of some of those products. So I kind of am asking you to look both at just smoking in general and the other products that are made and not just tobacco itself, because I think it's got a lot of similarities. Thank you. Oh, and also I think our shopping center would be amazing if that 25-foot rule was used, because it is a tool, and I absolutely agree with you, Mr. Purdock.
Thank you, Supervisor Sabatier. Yes, Ms. Duke.
I know this is Patty Duke. I know people are going to smoke. Can the sign be to the side of the building, smoking area only? Because they're going to smoke. So the 25 feet to the side of the building, away from the entrance, that's the only area that can smoke. Because if it says no smoking, they're going to smoke anyway. I've worked at many, many hospitals where they have no smoking on the campus. And there's your employees going out the exit over there or down in the parking lot. And there's no smoking on the whole campus, and they're going to smoke anyway. So to designate an area to smoke for those people that have to smoke, and I know addicts have to have 1, 2, 3. So that's my thought. Rather than just no smoking here, no smoking there, 25 feet, an area where they can smoke.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to put that into your thinking as well.
That's private property. They could do what they want.
At the rear of the building, yeah. But people walking in that are using the public entrances aren't employees, so.
Mm-hmm. So we cover it.
So they shouldn't, yeah. Okay, have we worn this one out?
Did.
Let's move along to city manager and council member reports. Mr. Flora.
Fairly short report.
Good.
We had several proclamations about it, but the police department will be hosting National Night Out August 6th at Highlands Park. We are continuing our work and getting closer to having our online GIS system up and running, so that will be exciting. I attended a number of meetings where I sat on the board over the last week, Clearlake Chamber of Commerce, Lake County Chamber of Commerce board meeting, not on that board, but attended because they were here in Clearlake. Disaster Council, the Lake County Chamber of Commerce has asked me to speak at their August 21st dinner meeting, which I have agreed to do, and also I'll be doing an interview on KPFZ at 9 a.m. on Saturday. If you're interested in tuning in. The former Burger Time building, the demolition permit has been pulled this week. And as I understand, the demolition is scheduled for August 5th. So hopefully that happens, and I will be out there with my phone and potentially dancing in the street if it actually does happen. And so the only other thing really that I wanted to mention is a couple of things related to Austin Park. We did post a little bit of information on social media yesterday. Signage has been posted, but preliminary testing that's been done by the tribes around Clear Lake identified potential elevated toxin levels due to cyanobacteria in the water. The higher elevations that they came up with on the lake were in the Austin Park vicinity. So we're just, recommending that folks use caution if they access the water, particularly with pets, and take a look at the County Water Resources. They have a good website with a lot of materials about that. The tests have been sent to the EPA, and they'll be doing final testing on that, which will come back next week. So if those tests are verified, potentially we would need to take further action. But, it is Clear Lake. We're all familiar with this happening. It's supposed to be particularly hot this weekend, so it's likely that some other areas of the lake may be suffering from this as well. The Austin Park design plans have been delayed again, unfortunately. They're supposed to meet their deadline on the 15th, so we brought our city attorney into the situation, sent them a demand letter to the CEO of the company as well as the principal in the Tahoe office, and it did shake things up a little bit. The principal and the designer that we've been working with are going to be here tomorrow morning to discuss, hopefully, a path forward. But on Friday. Yes, on Friday.
Which is going to make him even tougher.
I cleared my schedule to make this happen. Yeah, we're very disappointed with the performance, and but still, time-wise, the best way forward is to figure out a way to encourage them and incentivize them to complete the plans. So I appreciate Mr. Jones's involvement in turning up the heat on them a little bit. So we'll keep you posted. We still expect to get that out to bid this year, and I want to see a hole out there of some type before the rain starts. So that's my report.
All right, Councilmember Purdock.
I also attended the Clear Lake Chamber of Commerce meeting. It was a good meeting, good discussion. Looking forward to the soapbox derby race that's coming up soon. I hope everybody gets their cars built. Also attended the PEG meeting. Thank you very much for your passing of the agreement. Look forward to moving on, going forward there. One of the members, Mr. Jensen, who's also broadcasting this meeting, has worked with and is making some of our equipment available for people that want to do their own presentations and programming. I think that's pretty exciting, and making that equipment available to people to do that. So hopefully we're moving forward and doing some good things. That was it.
Councilmember Harris.
I have nothing of significant value to contribute.
I just have one thing. I went to the LAFCO meeting as our vice mayor was unable to attend. We have some exciting things going on out there by Hidden Valley, new housing going out there, 380 houses. So that's been annexed into their water system. So one thing that was very interesting to me was that they could only use the water that they can produce from their own wells. So that was kind of interesting, even though they anticipate that would never go dry, but had never heard that before. So it was kind of a different scenario on this annexation on the difference between Hidden Valley and this project. So they actually have to produce their own water, pump it into the station, and then they'll filter it back down. And so Hidden Valley people cannot use that water. Only they can. They have their own tank and everything. So it's kind of interesting to do that. So that project is going to start moving forward. So look forward to having some housing out there, I guess. We better get on the ball with ours. So that's pretty much all I had to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Overton. I don't have much. Lake Links has rented an office here in Clear Lake, and will occupy it as of August 1st on Lakeshore Drive. And I don't have the absolute address, however, it's the building that that Jeff Smith owns. So right across from Griffin's Furniture. So I'm looking forward to that building being there and having our meetings in that office. So that's really all of the report that I have tonight. Yes, ma'am. Sure, step on up.
Linda forgot to bring it, so Chief, would you like to come up here? This is a certificate of recognition from Cecilia Aguiar Curry for National Night Out.
Oh.
A very nice one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for presenting that.
Little presentations tonight, and I think most of what the whole time you were here. One night, you got them all.
Had quite a haul tonight, Chief. Okay, future agenda items. Mr. Flora, anything other than what we've already discussed?
Nope.
All right, we will adjourn then to close session at 8:12.